just maybe getting a pizza, whatever. It's just, I really miss that. And I also miss just the people, because it's just, everyone's insane in the best way. So like, I remember if you go out, with a clown nose, wearing, flip-flops in the dead of winter, you're still not the craziest person anyone will see that day. There's always someone crazier.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to English with Lewis. And I'm joined by another wonderful guest, and I'm excited to get going. I'm raring to get going, and we're going to have a chat for 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Let's play it by ear, Let's improvise. But let me know, where are you watching this from? And I hope you're equally excited to listen to us just having a chat for a while. So that being said, Giorgia, hello, welcome.
Hello, and thanks for having me, Lewis. And did you know that that's my dad's name, actually?
What is?
Lewis, spelled that way.
Okay. Well, here's my namesake. Lovely word. If someone has the same name as you, they are your namesake. So, yeah, great name. Great name.
It is.
But anyway, Giorgia, how are you today? And could you do us a favor and introduce yourself at the same time?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Giorgia, and I'm doing very well today. Did some work this morning, and I am calling in from Rome, Italy. Heard of it? Just kidding. And so I am an English teacher here in Italy. I'm originally from New York City, or as I say, New York, Manhattan. My students get a kick out of that pronunciation. And my mom is Italian, my dad's American, and I've been living in Italy since 2018 now. So quite some time.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yes, it does.
You used a nice expression, which was, my students get a kick out of it when I say it like that. What does it mean to get a kick out of?
They find it amusing. They think it's funny. They enjoy it greatly. They often have me say Manhattan and New York because that's how you're supposed to say it.
With American English accents, usually for people around the world and for Brits, we kind of put them all in the same bag, generally speaking, that most Americans sound very similar, whether they're from, I don't know, maybe not Arkansas, but whether they're from Massachusetts or Virginia and all of these places, but it's not actually true. And in particular, New York has a very kind of, I don't know, different and distinctive accent, right?
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up because one of my biggest, one of like the things that I really, really try to drill into people and explain to my students is the fact that, sure, we can say American English and British English. It's one language, and there isn't an American accent and there isn't a British accent, especially with British accents.
Yeah.
But there's this idea among English students that are learning English that, oh no, I prefer this or that, but there's a multitude in each. Now, with American accents, I would say it's not as varied as British accents because I watch quite a bit of British TV. I love British TV, and I know that you move a mile or, I don't know, 2 kilometers down the road and the accent's slightly different. In the United States, it's not quite like that. But yes, if you go across the US, you will hear slight differences. And the New York accent especially is dying out because the original New Yorkers can't afford to live in New York anymore. But yeah, my father has a mild New York accent. He was born in Brooklyn, grew up in Long Island. My aunts all have vague, New York accents. I have a New York accent with certain words. So, for example, in standard American English, you should say Florida, horrible, and orange. I say Florida, horrible, and orange, which is very New York. And it's just a habit.
Interesting. And like with New York, are there differences between different like cultures within New York? Because you have like the Italian American people and you have the African American people. You have a big kind of Jewish community in New York as well. are there differences in the accents depending on what like subculture you belong to, so to speak?
Interesting. That's a great question. There are traditionally, historically, there have been differences between the boroughs. So New York City is made up of 5 boroughs: Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Staten Island for some reason. No offense, but maybe all offense. And yes, there are differences between those accents that are very subtle. They're very subtle, very difficult to pick up. But yeah, also the different communities within New York will have accents. So, for example, one of my favorite topics to learn about and explore is AAVE, which stands for African American Vernacular English. Now, obviously, I don't speak that because I'm not African American, but it is a dialect that has its own grammatical rules, and it's a language basically. It's a dialect of English. And so I know that AAVE varies depending on the cities or the regions that you're in. And I also know that in New York, there's also a huge Puerto Rican and Dominican community, and they also have certain dialects of Spanish that have been created, which is like a Spanglish kind of thing. But yeah, it's great. I miss New York. Oh, talking about it makes me
Oh,
sad.
I mean, New York is known for being a melting pot, you know, the Big Apple. You have people from all over the place. You have so much international business going on, so much tourism as well. And I have to say that I have technically been to New York City.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it was when I was on my year abroad and I went to Argentina. And in order to go to Buenos Aires, I went from Manchester to JFK Airport. And I remember when I was flying over, I could see perfectly all of the skyline and everything. And then when we landed,
From Canada. Yep.
yeah, I guess so.
Yep.
And I could see all of that. And then obviously I didn't stay in New York City. I didn't actually go out of the airport at all. But I remember it was summer and it was so like sticky and hot and humid. Um, but yeah, I haven't actually like seen New York in the flesh.
Oh, you
So
should.
I should go. I really should. And it's like,
I don't think I've been to Leeds. I might have when I was a kid because we did a tour of England, but I don't know if we went to Leeds. So hey,
I mean, there's a big difference between the amount of people who visited New York and the amount who visited Leeds.
no,
Leeds is
it's
the
worth
capital.
visiting. New York is definitely worth visiting, but it's not. I criticize it in the way that only someone who's from there can, which is that I've seen it change in my lifetime dramatically. It's very much, it's not as authentic as it used to be, in my opinion. And yeah, but it's worth visiting as a tourist. It's at least once. It's very much worth it.
Okay, interesting. So tell me about your favorite things related to New York, because all I can think of at the moment is Central Park, skyscrapers, burgers, and hot dog stands. What are the things that you, as a New Yorker, like most about your city?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, me personally, as Georgia, I like my friends because a lot of them are still there. But what I really, really miss about, and the a reason why I moved to a city, is I love, and this is something very unique to New York when we're talking about American cities, is I really miss walking through New York. I'm actually reading a book now, the New York Trilogy by Paul Auster, and there's the first short story. The narrator is talking about this journey he took just walking around the city, and I miss just losing, like just spending hours just walking. Or I remember when I was younger and I used to, go out at night. If I had had a bit too much to drink, I would not want to get in a car or a taxi or, wait for the subway. So I would just walk home at, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. It's perfectly safe if you're not an idiot, and just walking the whole city, crossing bridges, just maybe getting a pizza, whatever. It's just I really miss that. And I also miss just the people, because it's just everyone's insane in the best way. So like I remember if you go out, with a clown nose wearing, flip-flops in the dead of winter, you're still not the craziest person anyone will see that day. There's always someone crazier. And it's interesting. This is full of interesting people that are just living their lives, and they're all so different, and it's fun.
So the people are the best thing about New York.
They were, but now the people in New York are the worst thing about it. I feel every time I go back, I go, oh, get out of my city.
Get out of here.
I'm not in here. Get out of here. That's what I want to say, but I don't, because I'm just grumpy. And also I left, so I feel like I can't lay claim to it. My friends say, you left, shut up.
So, I know. The people were amazing when you were there, and now you left, and look what happened.
There's a shirt I saw that I want to, I don't know, maybe I want to gatekeep, which is another great word. Maybe I want to gatekeep this, but I saw a shirt that said, the iconic, I love New York.
Yeah.
It said, I loved New York until you moved here and made it suck. And so that's how I feel.
Okay, perfect. And with New York, a lot of films are set in New York. A lot of famous people live in New York as well. Have you ever, walking around the city, come across or run into any like Hollywood actors or famous people?
That's very funny. So I have seen dozens of sets, like streets closed down for filming. I've never really seen a famous person, because one of the rules of New York is, because everyone's so crazy, you shouldn't, this is my rule, I think a lot of New Yorkers would agree, you really shouldn't look at people in the eyes, so when I walk around, I don't look at people, because it's rude and they might start talking to you if they're nuts. I once had a lady, I made the mistake by accident. I made eye contact with this lady on the subway platform, and she started asking me if I had accepted Jesus. And I said, oh, this is what you get. I mean, she was harmless, thank God. But I generally don't look at people, because a big thing about New York is you mind your own business. Mind your business. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's why it's only dangerous if you don't mind your business. So you mind your business. So I've never actually seen a face. I also have face blindness, I think. So I've never seen a famous person, really. I saw Alec Baldwin at the airport, but it might not have been him. But I think,
a big claim to fame.
Yeah, well, that's like if I could choose, it would not have been him. But
I know, it could have been so many interesting people.
Could have been yeah. And oh no, when I worked at a restaurant, I once sat Alfred Molina. He was the Octa guy in Spider-Man. And he was in Chocolat. Alfred Molina, he was the mayor of the city in Chocolat.
And I know. Let us know, anyone watching this, if you know this person. If not, Google him, and I'm going to do the same thing after we record this.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Now, it must have been interesting also growing up in such a big city, because I come from a relatively small town. I say I'm from Leeds, but it's actually a town of like 20,000 inhabitants, lots of fields, canals, rivers. Everybody kind of knows each other to a certain extent. So it's a great place to grow up as a child. You can play outside, kind of wander around, knock on your neighbor's door and be like, hey, are you coming out? So I had a very kind of nice, friendly, pleasant upbringing and childhood. But in New York, it seems like you've got so much stimulus kind of around you all of the time. So how was your childhood like in New York?
Yeah, I certainly was not allowed outside by myself until I was 13. And then when I was 13, I started going home by myself. My school was pretty far away from my house. The commute was around, which is a great word. The commute, that's a word. I know it doesn't exist in Italian. I'm sure it doesn't exist in some other languages as well. But the commute was, the time it took to get to school was around an hour-ish from my house. It was subways, and I had to go across town. So yeah, when I was 13, I was allowed to do that by myself. But it was great because I was lucky. I was very, very lucky to grow up near Central Park. So I had an outdoor space. I learned how to ride my bike there. And I also grew up kind of close to the Museum of Natural History, where my dad would take me every weekend pretty much. I was obsessed with dinosaurs. I wanted to be a paleontologist like everybody does when I was 6. So the cool thing was growing up with there's so much stuff for kids in New York City. And right now I'm living in Rome, in another big city. I'm trying to find that same kind of thing, but maybe I have to look harder. But there's a lot of stuff for kids. And also it was fun because of all that, because of all, the melting pot you mentioned earlier. It really normalized so much, so many things that, should be normalized at a young age. I was used to seeing people from all over the world and eating like food from all over the world. And that's actually another thing I miss about New York is just, oh, I want some Trinidadian food. Oh, let's go to that place. Oh, I want some Thai food. Let's go to this place. It's really good. Oh, I want, any food that you want, you can get the best and it's at your fingertips.
Okay.
So yeah,
is this not the same in Rome at the moment?
No. I will say this, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but you have to, I never want to offend anyone because I'm not even criticizing. But what I will say is this, as you know, Italian food is like, the Italian food is, if not it's one of the most famous cuisines in the world. It's renowned. It's really, really, everybody knows it and loves it, and rightfully so. It's delicious. Italian food is very, 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 very good. It's excellent.
Yeah.
Because of that, there is a tendency in Italy to view other cuisines as not as good, or there's not even that. There's a disinterest in discovering other cuisines, because if you have the best, why would you look elsewhere? So what I have found is that it's very difficult to find authentic ethnic food. I hate the term ethnic food, but you know what I mean.
Ethnic from all around the world. So you've got the best Italian food in the world, of course, in Italy. But if you want to have kind of more diverse and less common food from around the world, I imagine like you've got Chinese restaurants, Japanese restaurants, maybe Spanish restaurants, American kind of diner kind of restaurants. But aside from that, it might be a bit trickier to come across these, I don't know, Brazilian restaurants, for example.
No, even the Chinese restaurants are not great. Okay. Even because because I love variety in my food. I every time I have a student whose family or like was born in another country or originally their family comes from another country, the first thing I say is, do you know a good blank restaurant, a good Peruvian restaurant, a good Chinese, Korean, whatever? Yeah. Because I'm so desperate to find that. And I think it's also, the food is, because when you have a good cuisine, there's no need to improve on it. And so I also find that the food, like, of course, Chinese food in the US is not traditional like it is if you were to go to China, but it still has, that a little American flavor in it, but it's still, savory. It's seasoned. It's, it's umami, whatever. Here, everything is very much geared towards an Italian palate, and the Italian food is good because the ingredients are fresh. The flavors speak for themselves. There isn't a lot of, if you compare it to Indian food is like this depth of spice and these very, very complex combinations. Italian food, I'm not saying it's simple, but it's a different kind of complexity that comes from the ingredients themselves rather than, their preparation. I'm not explaining myself well, but I don't want to offend anyone. That's the problem here. But
no, 100%.
I know that in Milan and in Florence, or as I would say, in Florence, there's a huge Chinese community, and so there you can find really authentic food. Milan too, but Rome as well is getting better. It's getting much better as the younger Italians are starting to, embrace other cultures, I think, and I'm excited about that.
Okay, let's see what the culinary scene is like in the next 5 or 10 years. Then let's see. But
what's it like in Belgium?
In Brussels, it's pretty good for this, and it's strange because maybe the best pizza that I've eaten has been in Brussels.
I hope
because
no Italians are watching this because you're going to
there
get
will be Italians watching this, I can guarantee you.
a lot of hate for saying.
But I'm not like, listen, I spent 6 months in Palermo in Sicily when I was doing my Erasmus, so I'm used to Italian cuisine and I'm a lover of Italian cuisine. And I think everybody is like, it's a crowd pleaser in many ways. But it's true that when I was living in Spain, maybe the Italian food over there wasn't quite as good. Whereas here in Brussels, it is the center of Europe, apparently, because of the institutions and all of that kind of stuff. And you have a lot of Spanish people, Italian people, Portuguese people, Greek people, people from all over the Eurozone who go to Brussels and kind of settle down and make a life for themselves there. So you have a good variety of different types of food, and the Italian food is impeccable, and there are loads of different Italian restaurants. There are quite a lot of good Korean restaurants as well.
That's my favorite.
You have some good Thai restaurants. You have, well, the Indian food isn't that good, but that's just because I'm a bit of a connoisseur when it comes to
Because you're from
Indian
the
food.
UK. Best English food. Chicken tikka masala is the national dish, right?
Oh, just correction there. Tiki, no, but tikka, chicken
Oh,
tikka masala. You see,
pardon.
I'm very very protective when it comes to English
Sure,
Indian
sure.
food.
No, I've had great Indian food in the UK. And the best Thai food I ever had was in Amsterdam.
There you have it.
Colonialism, but there you go.
But now in
Yeah.
Belgium, I think it's pretty good in Brussels because it's such an international city. So you do have a little bit of everything kind of on your doorstep.
Sure.
But no, I could speak about food forever. And what
Well,
I'd like to get into
wait.
a bit more.
Oh,
Go on.
no, sorry. Go ahead.
Now, I was going to say that I'd like to get into a little bit more the fact that you are Italian American
Yeah.
and
Whoa. Not Italian American. I'm
American
Italian
Italian.
old American.
Okay. All right. So, with this, again, growing up bilingual, what was it like? Did your mum just speak to you in Italian and your dad in English, or what?
So there wasn't all the literature I believe that there is. There might have been, I don't know, but now there's a lot of there's a whole body of work dedicated to how to raise bilingual kids. And now I know one parent, one language is very, very popular. Yeah, but when I was growing up, my mom spoke to me in both, but she would read to me actually also in both. But I also was lucky enough. There's an Italian school in New York that's run out of the consulate there. It's connected to the consulate. So I went there until fifth grade. So until I was around 10, 11, 10. And so that was half Italian, half English. But yeah, and I would come to Italy every year since I was like 4 months old. And because I have my family's Italian. But yeah, in my house we would speak pretty much half and half. With my mom now, it's still, even with her in my text messages, it starts in Italian and then ends in English and vice versa. But yeah, my mom would and yeah, no, growing up bilingual, it was I'm really grateful for that because it helped me gain my love of languages, because I also studied French for 12 years and I was able to pick it up, and I was able to pick it up really easily because, in my opinion, my students never believe me. French is just, if you take English and Italian and mash them together, it's basically like boom, French. Because the vocabulary, a lot of it is, the Norman invasion, it's English. And the grammatical structures are actually a mix, because if we think about I'm going to do this, it's the same in French, right? But yeah, so growing up bilingual, I'm right now with my son. I have a son who's 16 months old, and I only speak to him in English. That's it. Only English.
Interesting. And has he started using English words, or?
Yeah. So I'm very excited. He speaks more English than Italian.
Okay.
I'm very excited about that. Yeah, he says things like all done, apple, bubble, horse. He can't do the horse. He goes, oh, fish, but it's shish, but he knows it's a fish. So, and he understands both languages, which is really cool, because I'll say, hey, what's that on your shirt? And you'll look down and you'll say the word he says for bear. And my husband in Italian will say, "Hey, pick that up," and he'll understand it in both languages, which is very cool. It's so crazy how kids just sponges. They're sponges.
I'm so
So
jealous. Like,
yeah,
I've interviewed a few people who are bilingual and were raised like that. And in a recent episode, I was speaking to Aurora. Um, and check it out if you haven't watched it.
yeah.
Aurora's online language lessons.
Okay, cool.
And she has the kind of opposite scenario to you almost, in the fact that she's living in London at the moment, but also raising her children as being bilingual. And in your case, you're living in Italy and doing the same thing. So it's a little bit of a battle almost to see
Yeah,
which language they end up picking up more and which one they prefer. Because at this age, they're not really conscious of it, I imagine. But then as they get older, there
yeah,
might be like a preference where you're like, Mom, Dad, I don't want to speak any more Italian. I want to speak English.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm worried about that rebellious face because I remember when I have this memory. I don't know why I remember this, but I remember because again, growing up in New York, you were surrounded by people speaking different languages. Everyone's speaking a different language. And after the Italian school, I went to an international school. I actually went to the UN school. So everyone was, like from somewhere else. And I remember seeing kids speaking to their parents in English and their parents answering in whatever language. And my like pre-adolescent brain was like, that's cool. That's what I'm going to do. And so for a while, I only wanted to speak in English and have her answer me in Italian. I thought it was like that, yeah. It's like when I thought braces looked cool. Oh, yeah. It's a very weird thing, but luckily that didn't last long. But yeah, I'm really adamant. I also read to him every time my parents come to Italy. They have suitcases full of books like Dr. Seuss and all the just book. I read a lot to him. I think that's important too.
Perfect. That sounds amazing. Now, let's focus on you and your English teaching now and kind of when you moved to Rome. So you mentioned French, that you studied it for 12 years. When did you actually decide that you wanted to work as an English teacher? How did that all come about?
That's a great question. I studied. I majored in philosophy. At university, as you would say, or college, as I would say. That's what I studied. And after I graduated, I actually moved to France for a year, and I was an au pair, for some kids for a year, just to, I guess, get experience in something. And then I moved back to New York, and I had a bunch of random office jobs. I worked for a PR firm. I also did restaurant work, which I think should be mandatory for every single person on this planet. You should have a required minimum of 6 months in the service industry, I think,
Okay.
before you're allowed to do anything else.
Why?
Because it teaches you that, it teaches you to be a good client and a good, it teaches you that, your mayonnaise on the side is not the end of the world. You can relax, I think it builds character. And then I worked for an Italian company, which was interesting. I learned a lot of Italian words like for invoice and stuff that I did not know beforehand. And then after that, I worked for New York Magazine for a bit, and then Trump won. Not to get political, but the world ended in a sense. And no, and even before that, I had been feeling really disillusioned. Great word, disillusioned with New York. I had seen it change. It was getting expensive. It was, I was feeling restless and listless and all kinds of thises. And I figured, hey, I have an Italian passport. Why not? And I said, well, I'm going to move to Italy. What am I going to do? I guess I could teach English, whatever. And so I did this. I took these classes to get certified. I'm looking at my TESOL certificate right here. And as I was doing it, I fell in love with it because when I studied philosophy, I studied epistemology and I wrote my thesis on Wittgenstein, Don't ask me anything about that because I
I
could not.
wouldn't even know how to ask you a question about that.
Me either.
Just went over the top of my head.
But anyway, he talks about language. It's all about, the language we use and in terms of the things they represent in the world. Is it created by our language or do we create, or vice versa, etc. So learning how to teach English was really eye-opening because I was like, oh, this is fun. It's so analytical. That was the thing I love, is just looking at things and finding patterns. And I fell in love with it. And then I got a job, not even in Rome, in Ferrara, where I met my husband. And I started teaching. And they just kind of, I was teaching at this school. They threw me into the deep end, just boom, go teach. And it was great because, students would say, well, for example, I love these questions. Actually, a recent question I got, which was like, oh God, I don't know. They was like, what's the difference between mindset and mentality? And I said, that's a question. I don't know. Great question. And then what I do in those situations, because I'm very smart, I say, what do you think it is? And then I go off of that. You know the
Right
trick.
back at you.
Yeah, well, sick. And but no, and then I obviously we asked Google altogether, but it's great because it makes me think, oh, what is the difference? How would I use it? Or even a better example, thinking about grammar. Like I remember when I was first teaching the past perfect continuous, I had been doing this, etc. And someone said, well, why can't I just use the past continuous? And if you don't, I had been teaching for 6 months at that point. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Great
Beats
question.
me.
Now, obviously, it's because past perfect continuous, you're introducing the duration of time. I had been teaching for 6 years before. You can't do 6 years with the past continuous. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But it made me think, and I love that. I love that aspect of just really just thinking a lot. Keeps me young.
Yeah. And did you enjoy teaching right from the beginning, like right from the get-go? Because for many people, even if you are a native English speaker, there can be a bit of a learning curve because you're not familiar with all of this grammar terminology. You don't know how to answer all of these burning questions. So it can be a little bit daunting because you're teaching physically in person in front of a group of people. They're expecting responses and answers to their questions. And sometimes there can be a bit of imposter syndrome of being like, I'll get back to you next time. But great question. Yeah. So did you enjoy it right from the beginning?
I did, but it's also because I wouldn't say I'm trying to put this in a way where I don't sound. Can I curse on here?
Go ahead. It's a
I
free
don't want
world.
to.
You do
I don't
you.
want. I don't want to sound like an asshole, but when it comes to certain things, I have a very high opinion of myself. So whenever, I don't know, when I'm in the classroom immediately I feel like from the get-go, maybe I'm misremembering, but I did feel like I was like, no, I am the authority here, even though I don't know everything, of course, but in this context, I know more. So I am a kind of authority. So sure, there, even with the mindset mentality, look, let's go to Google, let's see. And I'm not afraid to, or anytime I have to put the word recommend on the board, I swear to God, I cannot spell that to save my life. I can spell restaurant. Nope. I don't know why people complain about that, but recommend, I'm like, is it 2 C's or 2 M's? Even now I
One
couldn't tell.
C, two M's, right?
Sure.
Sick.
Sounds great. No idea. And I'll put it to my students. Any word I don't know, I'm like, does that look correct? Or achieve, I before E except after C. Yeah, but there's an H in the middle, right? So I'll put it to my students. So even in those cases, I don't feel like a fraud. I just feel like, hey, English spelling is difficult. Here's proof. But yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up the thing about knowing the terminology, because I know that in Italy, Italians, when they learn their own language, it's not like how we learned English. They're actually learning the names of the tenses. They're learning
Prossimo.
exactly passato prossimo, passato remoto. They're doing analysis of every sentence. This word is this word is that. And I know from speaking to many of my British colleagues that, and also growing up in the US, that's not what we do. We do very vague grammar rules, like, past is with, not even with ed, we just read.
I don't remember doing any kind of grammar, really, doing
I
the
before
English
E,
language.
except after C. When two, we did pronunciation rules. I remember when two vowels go a walking, the first one does the talking. Did you
Okay,
know that one?
that's new to me. I knew the like I
Yeah.
before E except after C, but not that, no.
MEAT, meat. There are two vowels. The first one is E, so meat. Or boat, BOAT. The first one is O, so it's the first one does the talking.
Okay,
It's a
interesting.
pronunciation rule with a million exceptions. But we don't do grammar. And when I tell I say go to London, because they think London the only English is spoken in London for some reason. Go to London and go find a British person and ask them what the past continuous is, and watch them look at you like, what?
Like the meme of like all of the algebra behind. It's like,
Exactly. It's just, yeah. So and it's mind blowing to them. And I go, because that's not how you learn English. You learn English by reading and speaking and writing and repeat.
no, absolutely. And obviously, when you are posting content, you do it kind of in Italian and English. Today, this is just completely in English. So it'll be interesting for many of your followers to be like,
Yeah.
that's what she sounds like all of the time. But
Yeah.
with your
Yes.
content, how did that start out? Like when you started teaching English, did you think, okay, at the same time, I'm going to start posting on TikTok and Instagram, or did that come a little bit later?
I want to first address what you said about my content being in Italian, because that is actually something that's very different from my classroom. Because in my classroom, I'm actually my colleagues make fun of me because I shout, "No Italian, don't translate." I'm in a funny way, I hope, but I'm very like, "Hey, hey, 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 no, it's forbidden." In my classroom, it's exclusively in English, no exception. But in my videos, because I want to reach a broader audience, I bend my rules. But no, I started my page in February of 2021. Now, I started teaching in 2018, in May of 2018. And then the pandemic happened. I don't know if you remember.
The what?
Yeah, 2020. It's
I don't know.
pandemic happened. I was teaching from home, right? But we were all stuck at home. And I got this idea. I was like, I guess I should do like TikTok's a thing that's happening now. I should teach English on TikTok. I think that would be cool. And then and then speaking of imposter syndrome, I was like, no, I don't want, like, I'm fine one-on-one in person, but then I don't know, something about broadcasting my face out to the world is a bit much, but
There's always the possibility of it reaching anyone
yeah,
in the world. So yeah, you
that
never know
was
what's going
daunting. It was a very daunting idea. And so I kept putting it off. I kept putting it off. I kept putting it off. And then finally, I saw other Italians get really popular doing English videos. And I said, if they can do it, I can do it. They can do it. I can do it. And so in February, I said to my then boyfriend, now husband, I said, look, I'm going to try it. I'm gonna get a ring light. I got the cheapest one. It broke recently. It was a piece of crap.
Classic.
It was awful. It was so unsteady. I'm glad it broke. I said, and also with glasses, you can't even use it. It's useless. I said, I'm gonna try this. If in a month I got nowhere, if in a month I get nowhere, packing it in and calling it a day. And then I did it and it kept growing. And I said, interesting, cool. And so that's kind of how it all happened. And I get inspiration from my students, like my physical students I see in school, because they're chock full of amazing questions. Like, I love the question, because English is crazy. I'm glad we don't have to learn it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, mentality and mindset, I'm still thinking about it like, wait, what is the difference? Is there
Don't look at the first result the first result on Google is from Instagram. It's like some posts on Instagram, but it's done as like the featured thing, but that's wrong. I will tell you my definitions. I actually switched them, but we use them. We know the difference because when we use it, that's the problem with explaining it. It's like, if you wait for me to use it organically, then you'll see. But
I mean, usually I just simplify everything and I'm like, they're synonyms, If you want to use one, use one. If you want to use another, use another.
I like to make
Richness of the vocabulary. Yeah,
oh
I
no, I
don't go
make
into
everyone.
detail.
I like to make everything complicated and difficult for everybody.
Your students are just like, oh, why? Come on, make it easy for once.
Trying to give little tricks here and there, but English is nuts. Yeah.
Now, obviously we spoke quite a lot about New York. We touched on Rome a little bit. But now you're living in Rome. I assume that Rome is kind of home, but you also mentioned another city, Ferrara. Do you intend on staying in the capital and in the big city, or would you one day like to move to the countryside or another coastal city or somewhere like that? What is the plan with this?
I don't want to move to the countryside. No. I like Rome. I love Rome. Rome is my grandmother's from Rome, so you could say it's in my blood. Rome is very interesting because since you said you studied abroad, did you studied abroad in Italy or did you?
I mean, it's kind of I didn't learn that much Italian whilst I was there, but I was in Palermo in Sicily. And I was there for like 5 months.
There anyway. I'm just kidding, but
yeah, exactly. It's all Amuni, which is like andiamo, let's go in Siciliano. But yeah, I was there and I visited Rome, but no, I've never like lived there, of course. But it seems like an amazing city.
Yeah, and also the people. I mean, Italians tend to compare New York to Milan, or rather, they compare Milan to New York. But I would say that New York is more like Rome because of the character of the city. Like cinema is here, right? It's the Roman accent is so famous, and Roman slang has become used all over. It's used all over Italy because it's like so culturally prominent. And Romans are so funny. They're so funny. They're just a riot. They're just hilarious. Everything's a joke. It's just like a constant like that. It's very, very, very funny. So I like this place a lot. Italy in general is very frustrating for the bureaucracy, but I know Italians can be offended by that because I'm not saying anything that's groundbreaking. The bureaucracy, and Italians will say, "But in the north, it works." No, it doesn't. Not much better. It's still a mess. I lived in Ferrara, which is a small city in the north, and it was still a nightmare compared to compared to New York.
Yeah.
But in Rome, it's sunny, it's warm. I don't know in centigrade, but in Celsius. But it was I can tell you right now, it's 54 degrees, which is I don't know
10, 15.
Sure. I don't know. So,
I mean, you should definitely learn this if you've been in Europe for like what?
I know fever. When I was growing up, we had a thermometer in my house in Celsius. So I know a fever in Celsius, which I think is important.
That's enough. What else do you need, right? That's fine.
Fahrenheit, I just prefer because it makes more sense because we're not water. Why do I need to know 100? It's crazy. Anyway, it's sunny. People are great. I wouldn't move to the country. It would be interesting to have an experience in a different European country. But for now, the plan is to stay put.
Excellent. Now, on that now, I'm going to ask you one final question and then we're going to have to call it a day for today. But it's been great chatting to you.
Yes.
I know Rome is famous for 4 pastas. So you have the most famous, which is carbonara. Sure. Then you have the other one, which is I know these so well. Cacio pepe.
Good.
And then you have another one, which is with tomato, which is it's arrabbiata. No, what is it? It's on the tip of my tongue. I know it so well. Amatriciana.
There you go.
And then the last one is just, what's that?
The G.
Gricia.
Very good. I'm impressed you know Gricia.
There we go. There we
What's
go.
your favorite?
My favorite, I mean, I like the tomatoey sauce. So amatriciana, if I had to order it, I'd go for amatriciana. But yeah, which one is your favorite if you have to choose between the four?
Wow, I don't know. It depends on my mood. I like gricia a lot. They're all great. I used to make a mean
A
carbonara.
really good one.
Mean carbonara, yeah. They're all really good, but I agree with you. Right now I'm feeling in the mood for something tomatoey, so if I had to order right now, I would probably get a matriciana. But I will say that one of my favorite Roman dishes is abbacchio, which is lamb. It's really good. My grandmother was Roman again. She makes it. She also does artichokes. If I'm rambling, cut me off. But artichokes are like quintessentially Roman. And my grandmother taught me how to. It's a bitch to do it, but she taught me how to peel it and prepare them and everything. And turns out, haha, your hands turn black from artichokes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're handling artichokes, they dye your skin black. But she taught me all that stuff. Also, tomatoes stuffed with rice, huge Roman thing. My grandmother makes a really good tomatoes stuffed with rice. That's very Roman.
And the
But I
pizza's
will
different as
say
well, right?
pizza, I think. But yeah, it's thin. I prefer the Neapolitan pizza, but honestly, if I had to choose between pizza and pasta, I'm choosing pasta. Love pizza, but gun to my head, I'm choosing pasta all the time,
Okay.
every day.
And everybody watching this, which one would you go for, pizza or
Yeah.
pasta? Let us know if you're still
Gun
here
to
at this
your
point.
head.
Gun to
For the
your head.
rest of your life.
You really, really have to choose. Is it pizza or pasta? But no, Georgia, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've got to head. I've got another meeting in 5 minutes, but it's been a blast.
Sure.
I've had a ball. It's been so fun getting to know you.
Yeah.
And everybody watching this, I hope you enjoyed it too. If you have any questions for either of us, don't hesitate to ask. And Georgia, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me ramble for I don't know how long. It's always fun to talk about oneself, isn't it?
Like a therapy session.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, even better because I didn't have to pay.
Just, let it all out. Vent.
Great. How does that make you feel? No, thanks very much, Lewis. This was really, really nice. Thanks.
My pleasure. So thank you, everybody, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.